On this episode of Three Tool Players, Pete Rose is reinstated into Major League Baseball, and we discuss his candidacy for the Hall of Fame. Also, should the players who have been confirmed to have used PEDs deserve a second look? And how will the story of baseball history be told? All of this and more on this episode of Three Tool Players. Welcome to Three Tool Players. I'm Chris Spear, and alongside me, as always, are the Hammer brothers, Brian and Dan Hammer. Say hello to the internets, fellas.
Hello to the internets, fellas.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Big news coming out of the commissioner's office late last week with the decision by Rob Manfred to, I guess, what's the way to say this? To terminate a lifetime ban when life is over. It's not a permanent ban anymore. It's a lifetime ban, and I think there's a nuance there. Players like those from the 1919 Chicago White Sox, or the so-called Black Sox, who were embroiled in the gambling scandal, they are now eligible, and that would include shoeless Joe Jackson. But the headline news there was Pete Rose is now eligible for enshrinement, or it is to say he's been reinstated into Major League Baseball. I think he was always eligible for enshrinement. The ban didn't extend to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They were just honoring the ban. So here we are now, and the question becomes, what about Pete Rose? Is he worthy of enshrinement, and should he be enshrined? I think the answer to the first question is easy. I think the answer to the second question may be a little bit more difficult to answer. What do you guys think?
I'll say that, yes, he is deserving based on what he did on the field. You can't deny over 4,000 hits. You can't deny his longevity and his hustle. Should he be? I say no. And here's why. Pete Rose really to baseball is kind of like me to V8 juice. I don't like V8 juice. I have to be reminded every now and then that I don't like V8 juice. I'll take a sip on an airplane. I will be at a meeting and I'll say, oh, let me try some of that V8 juice. Oh, that's right. This sucks. And the same example I'll give you is, hey, there's Pete Rose. Hey, remember how great Pete Rose was? Hey, let's invite him up to the broadcaster booth. And then Pete Rose opens his mouth and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. It's Pete Rose. No, please take the microphone away from him. Oh, he's a deplorable human being. No, look at his haircut. I mean, listen, at the end of it all, yes, what he did on the field grants merit for enshrinement, but him as a character, him just an ambassador to baseball, no.
I'm going to have to agree with everything that you just said right there, because when he went to Citizens Bank Park, this was a couple years ago, and they were having Old Timers Day. They let him up in the booth with Crucky, and they give him the mic, and the things that came out of his mouth. If you were watching the game that day, you were in for a treat of listening to Pete Rose while he talked about the game. And it's just his slurs. I mean, like his F-bombs, like anything was open. He did not have a filter. And this is the type of person that Pete Rose was. Getting his autograph, like a little kid can go up to him, a 10-year-old kid, can you sign my ball? $50. Yeah. And this is the guy that just was not a good human being. You know what's funny, though? He did win the Roberto Clemente Award, the humanitarian award.
So he was still playing, he was probably donating time and money to whatever charitable cause, and good stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the end of it all, we all know why he got banned. Mm-hmm. And he kept giving us example after example after example after V8 after V8 after V8 sip of why he's no bueno. He's absolute basura as a human being. And why should he also get the accolades of being in the Hall? Now, I know, Spear, you're going to disagree with me because there's plenty of rascals.
Spoiler alert.
Well, listen, it's not a spoiler alert when I look at your face and I look like I just pooped in your cereal. So I just want to go on record by saying that this is a guy that I don't care if you have a pulse or if you're in the dirt. You or your, I guess your estate should not be awarded this entrance into the Hall.
So just to underline a couple of things, Pete Rose was banned for gambling on games while he was the player coach of the Cincinnati Reds. This is a big no-no. The rules against gambling are posted in every dugout in Major League Baseball across the country. It is a big, big no-no. And it's in large part due to some of the scandals that have rocked baseball throughout history with regards to gambling. Chief among them was the 1919 Chicago White Sox. They're often referred to as the Black Sox because they were involved in I guess, a plot to throw the World Series. The players were paid to throw the World Series so that certain gamblers could cash in, and they were paid handsomely for that. This was one of those for the integrity of the game kinds of things. And rightfully so. You want to make sure that if a fan is watching a game, that they are getting their money's worth. They're getting a pure expression of the sport, and that players who are playing the sport are playing by the rules, and you can enjoy it confident that the players are playing by the rules and not trying to throw the game in any meaningful way. Just to underline a couple of other things about Pete Rose is the all-time hit leader, 4,256 hits. He's one of only two people in baseball history to have more than 4,000 career hits. The other is Ty Cobb. He has the most career games played. He has the most career at-bats. He has the most career singles. He's the only player in MLB history to play at least 500 games at 5 different positions: first base, second base, third base, left field, and right field. He has a 44-game hitting streak to his credit, which is good for third all time. He has 3 World Series championships, 2 with the Reds and 1 with the Phillies in 1980. He's won an MVP award. He won a World Series MVP award. He was a Rookie of the Year in 1963. He had 2 Gold Gloves, 3 National League batting titles, 17 All-Star appearances. By any statistical measure, Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer. Baseball loves its records. Baseball loves its numbers. You can say certain numbers to certain people, and they immediately know what it is, absent any other context. If I said 56 to you, what would it be?
Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio.
If I said 755 or 762, what would it be?
Barry Bonds.
I would say Barry Bonds, but then Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron. If I said 2,632, what would it be to you?
Cal Ripken Jr.
Cal Ripken. But these are the kinds of, this is my point. I don't have to give you any other context other than the number. And that's what baseball does. Baseball looks at these records with reverence. They look at 4,256 with reverence, although it's not acknowledged because of what Rose did as a member of the Cincinnati Reds.
So everything you're saying is true. Absolutely. Unequivocally, the numbers are there. And Pete Rose is being held to a standard that the Black Sox were not. There wasn't a morality or character clause, as they call it. So Rose is being held to a little bit of a higher standard. You had folks that you mentioned, Ty Cobb being that other individual with over 4,000 hits. He abruptly ended his career along with Tris Speaker because there were allegations that he was fixing games. The commissioner at the time did not go forward because they were just on the heels of the latest scandal with the 1919 Black Sox. There wasn't enough evidence, and plus the person who brought the evidence to everyone's attention was afraid to take the stand and face Ty Cobb. So he was afraid of basically getting beaten. That's how bad Cobb's attitude and what his reputation brought. So to make a long story short, too late, the idea is Ty Cobb, Tris Speaker walked away. Now, what was interesting about that time was the commissioner's actually one who brought it up, and the general public kind of backlashed against him and said, no, this is not what happened. We all stand for Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker. How dare you? These guys are revered, players, etc. But that said, they still stepped down, took immediate retirements, and still made the Hall of Fame. But it wasn't until several years after the Hall was created that the character clause was put into effect, which is why somebody like a Pete Rose is being held out.
1945 was when the character clause was introduced into the Baseball Writers Hall of Fame's rules for election, and it reads as such: voting shall be based upon the player's record, playing ability, integrity, sportsmanship, character, and contributions to the team or teams on which the player played. This is exactly the kind of thing that Pete Rose is being held to, the integrity on which the player played. And he did break the rules while he played for the Cincinnati Reds. The many articles about this particular topic point out that this rule, as it's written, is subjective and often not consistently applied. There are plenty of examples as to how it hasn't been consistently applied. The best and probably most prominent is Gaylord Perry, who was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame after this clause was introduced, and also after he admitted to cheating as a pitcher, doctoring the ball for 2 decades of his career. He even wrote a book entitled Me and the Spitball. So this wasn't something that he was hiding from. He came out and said it. Yeah, I did this. This was part of my game.
The only thing,
Okay.
though, Spear, is the 70s and 80s, everyone looked a blind eye. It wasn't just, Gaylord Perry that was doctoring the ball.
Yeah,
I
sure. It
feel
was
that
everybody. Yeah.
everyone was doing it. Everyone was trying to gain an edge to win
Yes.
a game. And that's
Yes.
that's basically how it
Yeah.
was. How it was back then, it was just like the Wild West of baseball.
I agree.
They could do anything. I mean, like we even saw it in Major League, putting like Vaseline.
Crisco,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Crisco.
Crisco,
Vaseline,
Bardol,
Vagisil.
Vagisil,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Any one of these will give you 2 to 3 inches drop on your curveball. I mean, it's funny because it's true. The character of Eddie Harris was an acknowledgement that this was what baseball was allowing to happen. That even Eddie Harris in the late stages of his career had to be some sort of representation for Whitey Ford, another Hall of Famer who admitted to doctoring the ball late in his career to maintain a competitive advantage.
You want to understand something though? Out of everybody you just mentioned, Harris is the only one dumb enough to steal Joe Boo's rum,
That's true.
right? Do you
That's true.
think Whitey Ford would steal
Not a
Joe Boo's
chance.
rum? Not
Not
a
a chance.
chance.
No, Whitey
Gaylord
Ford had his
Perry?
own rum.
That's right. That is also true.
Hey, bartender, Joe Boo needs a refill.
My point with all of this is gambling was far more rampant during the time that you're talking about with Cobb and Shoeless Joe Jackson and whoever. Baseball has always had its dark moments. It's had its challenges with maintaining the integrity of the game, and it's gotten better every time and found a way to apply a rule differently or to police it differently or to ensure that a fan watching the game is getting what they're paying for. They're getting a pure version of the sport, but it hasn't always been so. What baseball, I think, does a poor job of, or has done a poor job of, they are getting better at it now. But what baseball does a poor job of is acknowledging and recognizing the darker moments of their history. And when they don't want to acknowledge it, when they want to sanitize it a bit, this is what they do. They kind of run to the idea that baseball history should be shiny and not filled with the context or the darker moments that allowed baseball to evolve and get better.
They're switching to for the betterment of baseball with what they've done in the late 90s with the PEDs, the performance enhancing drugs. They put a ban on it. But the thing before that was we had the strike in 94 and we had no fans. And the two guys that basically brought the fans back to the stadiums were Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire. But then after the big Balco scandal,
No, it was the
it,
Mitchell case
it was the
before
Mitchell
Balco.
case and Balco. This was a negative light on baseball. So what did MLB have to do? They basically had to out the people that were taking performance enhancing drugs and make a statement. Anyone that was linked to performance enhancing drugs were banned from the Hall of Fame, ever
They were
making the Hall of
never
Fame.
They
they were
weren't
never
banned.
officially
They were
banned though,
just
Dan. They were
they were shunned.
snubbed.
They were shunned.
That's the difference. Pete Rose was officially banned by Bart Giamatti. He was flat out it was decreed that Pete Rose shall not be recognized by Major League Baseball.
Now, let me ask you a question then. So, if they're going to allow Pete Rose in, he tarnished the integrity of baseball. So
It opens the
then
floodgates.
it opens up the floodgates. So now let's talk about the guys with PEDs.
So I think there's a little bit of apples and oranges here. Granted, it's bad character, it's cheating. I know you're talking about doctoring the ball and everything like that, but these pitchers, Gaylord, Perry, never took a performance enhancing substance. He had a performance enhancing substance on the ball. Fine, you can split hairs all you want, but he didn't actively ingest or inject anything that was going to make him bigger, stronger, get past injury faster, basically make himself almost like the dark side to give you abilities some consider to be unnatural. And that's who Barry Bonds was. If you look at him in his peak, right? If you go back and look at all these guys during the 90s into the aughts doing the steroids. I mean, don't forget, I mean, people did steroids even before that. People got caught in the 80s and things like that, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, you got caught, you sat out, you got your hand slapped, maybe you're out of baseball, whatever, but it was absolutely rampant. And it was at a time where baseball needed help. You talked about basically Sosa and McGuire saving baseball. That's exactly what they did. And baseball needed their help. They needed to get the fans back after that strike because they were dead in the water. And what is going to put fans back in the seats and get people excited again? Well, let's hit a bunch of dingers,
Yep.
right? Oh,
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
chicks dig the long ball,
chicks
man.
dig the long ball.
Chicks absolutely dig the long ball. And you can sit there and you say, all right, now the revenues are starting to spike and increase. And the folks that are looking the other way, it's like, wow, this is getting so rampant that eventually there has to be a whistle that's blown. And that's what happened with the Mitchell report. And as collateral damage being what it is, all these gentlemen who were making big dollars, putting up big numbers, became the sacrificial lambs. There's very little argument.
And that's it's okay with you.
It does. And I'm going to tell you why. Because even though Pete Rose has over 4,000 hits, you also have to ask yourself, how did he get over 4,000 hits? He was also a player coach, right? Which meant that he could insert himself into any sort of situation that was going to be favorable. And he would put himself in situations that were advantageous that otherwise, if he was just a player and was just playing for, whoever team, he'd have to play, the lineup card based on what was happening in that given moment, that given day. As a manager, as a coach, player, / whatever, you have a little bit more power in how you insert yourself into the lineup. And same can be said about player coaches in the past, your Rogers Hornsbys of the world, you name it. Now, what I'm trying to get at is these sacrificial lambs. Yes, they were laid at the altar of, MLB, and they were sacrificed. Did they save baseball? Yes. Did they do it the right way? No. And the idea is you start to look at these inflated numbers and you say, as a Major League Baseball purist, as much as you can be, you could say, well, Barry Bonds is not my home run king. Hank Aaron still is, because this is a man that didn't cheat, did it the right way, etc. Now, you can roll your eyes at me and you could say, well, hey, look, this is just the era of it all, and they were just products of their own environment. You could be right. Absolutely. And if you want to put them in the hall, fine. Put an asterisk next to their names. Say, listen, I doped myself. I gave myself anabolic steroids. I gave myself Ozempic. Hey, listen, we all need to look good. We all got to get ready for bathing suit season. But them's the facts. Now, you don't have to agree, and that's fine. But I'm not going to look at somebody like a Barry Bonds or McGuire or an A-Rod and say, you're the best ever. Because you could have been, but you decided to take the steroids. You decided to take that performance enhancer.
Wouldn't you think that you basically would take everyone out of that? Because if you're going back, people were taking like stimulants and whatnot. I mean, like
The greenies, the amphetamines.
yeah, and like it wasn't until like baseball stepped in and started banning all of those substances, just one after the other. I mean, like then if you think about it, you go back, then everyone is tarnished. And it's not just one person. It basically, they're basically looking for a scapegoat. And so the spotlight is bright on Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa because of them hitting dingers and like being tested positive for steroids. But a lot of guys back in like 60s, 70s, 80s and taking testosterone, I mean, like today, this day and age, you can't even take Sudafed. Sudafed is a performance enhancing drug, and you can't take that. What Jose Alvarado took, he took a weight loss pill and he was banned for 80 games.
Well, that's important. That's very important, Daniel, because as I mentioned before, it is bathing suit season right around the corner, and he's just trying to get ready. All right. He needs to look good in that banana hammock when he goes out to the Jersey Shore. All right.
Here's the thing about the integrity of the game and the keeping the character of the game in play. And I will remind the both of you that even though anabolic steroids were on the so-called banned substance list as of 1990, there was no testing nor enforcement of the fact that anabolic steroids were on that list. So there was no risk to a player taking anabolic steroids. There was no reason for them not to, because they could not be caught. So who failed there? Was it the players or was it baseball? Was it Major League Baseball who failed? Because they neglected to do what they needed to do to enforce the integrity of the game for going on 10 or 12 years until they came up with a testing and enforcement policy that made sense. In the meantime, they let these players go off and do everything that they needed to do to gain a competitive edge, to hit home runs 18 miles, to break every record, and oh, by the way, while they were doing so, save baseball in the process. Who's wrong here? It's everybody. So how can you point fingers and call people sacrificial lambs when everybody was at fault? If everyone is at fault, then you have to acknowledge that this period of time was part of your history, and you have to put it into context. You have to allow people to acknowledge and appreciate that this happened. You have to talk about it in the context in which it happened. And the way I know that is there is a Negro Leagues exhibit in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And oh, by the way, a few years ago, they started to include players in the record book from the Negro Leagues, acknowledging that discrimination and segregation was a dark moment of their past that they needed to acknowledge, and they brought this stuff back into the record book, which, by the way, changed a lot of the records. And now Josh Gibson owns a record rather than Ty Cobb, which I'm sure makes him roll over in his grave, seeing as how he was a known racist, having gotten into a fight with an African-American groundskeeper who just wanted to shake his hand.
If you take a look at the competitiveness in the Negro Leagues, they could have wiped the floor with some of those MLB teams.
Record books would have been completely different if some of these guys, Satchel Paige,
different.
Josh Gibson,
the
record books would have been completely different. And that's what Major League Baseball started to do. Is it was the acknowledgement that this other set of baseball teams needed to exist because we screwed up. The entire ownership of Major League Baseball teams kept these amazing baseball players out of the conversation. So we're bringing them back in. Is it a little bit late? Yes. But we have to acknowledge, but we have to acknowledge, yes, it is. But we have to acknowledge that this is part of our history. And when you acknowledge that it's part of your history, you give the opportunity for people to examine that history through whatever lens makes the most sense to them. I know this because when my kid was 10 years old, I took him to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we walked through the Negro Leagues, and I had to explain to him what the 1950s were like. I had to give him that historical context. And that's what I think is important. If my kid is taking his kid, or I'm walking around the Baseball Hall of Fame with my grandkid, and I have to explain steroids and what it meant to the integrity of the game and why it's not good to cheat, let me have that opportunity. Let me have the ability to talk through the context of history through the lens of somebody who experienced it and who understands it. The thing about this for me is history has to tell a tale. And that's what a museum does. A museum allows you to walk through history and see it with all of its warts. But right now, the old axiom is history is told by the victors. And right now, Major League Baseball is the victor. And they're sanitizing their entire version of history to what they want it to be. Not what it is, not what you should be talking about, but what you want it to be. And that, to me, I have a problem with this because I don't want my history to be sanitized. I want to learn from it. I want to understand it. And I want to be able to get better as a result of it.
Okay. So by definition of this explanation, are you saying that the hall should open another wing specifically for PED users?
Not even. I think you guys have been to the Hall of Fame. Every plaque tells a story about that player.
Yep.
Every plaque.
Mm-hmm.
So tell the story about the player. If you're going to induct Pete Rose, put on the bottom of his plaque that he gambled on games and was permanently banned. Put it right on his plaque so that when I'm standing there with my grandkid, I can point to this, and and if my grandkid asks me, "Hey, what's this about?" I can tell him about it.
So that
And
means are you going to switch up Ty Cobb's plaque?
I was about to say the same thing. You're going to go in there and add some more verbiage in that
I
says,
don't
Yeah.
think. I
noted
mean, I don't.
racist,
I don't
beat
know
up a
if you have to go
landscaper.
back. I don't know if you have to go back and touch up every other plaque. But if we're going to open the door to Pete Rose, and there's no guarantee that anybody will, if you're going to open up the door to Pete Rose and you're going to say Pete Rose is going to be a Hall of Famer, he's going to be inducted, he's going to get his plaque. If you're going to accept that he's being inducted, even after the cheating, even after the gambling, even after all of the doing the things that personally benefited him, then I think not only should you tell the story about Pete Rose and put it on his plaque, I think you have to open the door to re-examining what it means to bring these other baseball players like Bonds, like Clemens, and have their plaques say similar things about how they might have violated the integrity of the game.
So you
Because
want
it's
every
important.
plaque to have an asterisk on it. That's what we're hearing.
You know what? We've had these kinds of things for a long time. Roger Maris had an asterisk next to that 61 for a long time because he
Yep.
played 162 games and Ruth played, what, 154?
Yep.
Roger Maris and his family has had to live with that asterisk next to his record for how many years before McGuire came. So now there's an asterisk next to his and another one next to Bonds. And I mean, you could say that the only one who should be the rightful holder of the home run record is Judge, because
Yeah.
he's the only one in the last however many years who broke the record when he hit 62 without any kind of allegations or any kind of implications in anything off-putting.
Aaron Judge is very good at baseball.
Aaron
He
Judge
is.
is very good at baseball.
He's great at baseball.
So in the end, right, you feel that there has to be absolute transparency and context explained throughout all hall admissions, good, bad, or ugly, starting with these PED users. If we're going to open up the floodgates for somebody like Pete Rose and his haircut, we also have to say on his plaque that, hey, not only does he have a snappy haircut, but this guy also was kept out of baseball for many years because of his gambling indiscretion. Fair assessment of the situation here.
Well, first, I think that no one should be held out of the Hall of Fame because of their haircut. Let's be.
Have you looked at Pete Rose?
I mean, I don't know if that's his biggest offense, so I'll just I'll just stop there. The short answer is yes. I think baseball has had dark periods, and I think you have to acknowledge and appreciate all of the history, not just the shiny parts. You have to acknowledge warts and all the game of baseball. It's never been sanitized. It's never been clean. It's never been shiny. There's always been the good, the bad, and the ugly. And oh, by the way, the good, the bad, and the ugly are already enshrined. So who are we kidding?
Damn hypocrites.
So with that said, if we had to choose but one player each of us to take out of the Hall of Fame, who would it be?
I don't want to take anybody out of the Hall of Fame. That's my point. I think everybody who's there should stay there for all the reasons that they're already there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't take anybody out for some morality clause or for the integrity of the game, because the integrity of the game was different then. People allowed certain things then that they don't allow now. So as far as I'm concerned, those people that are already enshrined reflect the game as it was played with warts and all, and they should absolutely be there.
I am going to agree with Spear on this one because the game has been the way it has been. It has changed over the years, but there's already people in there that have bad integrity, doctoring baseballs and everything. Just let it be. That's the history of baseball. So why change it? Why weed out some of these phenomenal players from like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s just because they decided, you know what, these are banned substances now?
Okay, that's a fair assessment. I'm going to go on record and say there's only one person that should be removed from the Hall of Fame, and that's Mike Piazza. He's a Met. He's
Come on, that cuts our
absolute.
whole. That
He's
cuts our whole.
absolute.
Come on.
He's absolute basura. All right. He never hit 500 home runs. All right. I
Son of
don't
a.
like.
We only
I
have
don't
the
like
two. Leave us
That's right.
alone.
I don't want to cut you in half. I'm going to
Leave
cut you
us
in half.
alone, you
I'm going to leave
rat son
Seaver
of
in
a.
there. I'm going to leave Seaver in there, but I'm going to tell you, Piazza, he's gone. If I'm
Come
walking into the Hall of
on.
Fame as a janitor, and I hope to God, I'm going to go into Indeed.com right now, and I'm going to see if there's any openings. And I hope I can just come in as a janitor. And one
Just
night
go
I'm
get
going to
it. Just
walk
take his
in.
plaque out.
I'm
Yeah.
going to take his plaque out, and we're just going to toss it in the trash and be like, "Take that, you and your stupid Prel freaking hair products. Get out of my Hall of Fame. You don't belong here.
You know what? I'm
Go
looking up
World Series winning piece of shiitake mushroom."
You know what? I'm looking up baseball Hall of Fame careers right now as we speak. Let's see what we can get you, Bry.
Please do.
I have a top 5 list of people that should be in the Hall of Fame. I'll start with 5. I will go with Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa has 609 career home runs. He's 9th all time. He had 66 home runs in 1998. That's good for 3rd all time. He had 64 home runs in 2001. That's good for 5th all time. He had 63 home runs in 1999. That's good for 6th all time. Right after him, I'd put McGuire, his partner in crime. 70 home runs in 98, 2nd all time. 65 home runs in 99, 4th all time. 583 career home runs. That's good for 11th all time. Roger Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's number 3. 7 Cy Youngs. He has the American League record for career Ks with 4,167, and he's 3rd all time in strikeouts with 4,672. Number 2 is Bonds. I don't know what else you need to say about Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is one of the greatest hitters of all time, and his 2 big records. You talk about how baseball lionizes these numbers. 762 is the all-time career home run record. 73 home runs in 2001 still sits atop the leaderboard for most home runs in a season. And by the way, together, Bonds, McGuire, and Sosa own the top 6 spots on the all-time season home run list. And my number 1 is Rose. For all the things that we talked about at the top of the show, he's the all-time hit king, and that is a record that is unlikely to be broken.
All right, Spear. So your list, I agree with 3 out of 5.
Who else you got?
I actually have 2 that were not on your list. My first one, which is number 5, is Curt Schilling.
Okay.
Curt Schilling, 6-time All-Star, 3-time World Series, a World Series MVP, and an NLCS MVP, and also won the Roberto Clemente Award. Now, it's funny that we say that because he's out of the Hall of Fame. He's being snubbed because of his toxic behavior. So the writers do not like Curt Schilling and
his character.
His
they don't like him. They don't
They
like
don't
him, so
like
they
him.
don't vote for him.
And they don't like his video game studio that failed and
38 studios.
Lost people millions of dollars. Nice job, Kurt. We were looking forward to that game.
So
But
he's my number 5.
He's a great example of the character clause in full effect.
Absolutely. My number
Him and that
4,
fake sock of his, that wasn't real blood. That was ketchup.
The fruit
We all
roll up.
know it.
Yeah. My number 4 is, a Yankee, and I'm sure that Brian is, sad that he is not in the Hall of Fame, and that's Alex Rodriguez. He has 3 MVPs. He has the '09 World Series, which I think the Phillies should have won, but well, that's a story for another day. 2 Gold Gloves, 10-time Silver Slugger Award. He has a batting title, and he had a career batting average of 295 with 696 home runs. Like, how do you leave a guy that played the game hard, out of
Did
the
he
Hall
play
of
the
Fame?
game hard?
You don't think he did?
No, he's a douchebag, and I'll tell you why. How about the fact that he got caught for his
Yeah, but
biogenesis?
we're throwing all of that out, Bri. We're throwing
I
out
get that.
PEDs.
Oh,
Who
I get
gives
that.
it? Yeah.
We're throwing it all out. So basically, we have zero integrity, 100%. This is a guy, don't forget, who got into it with Jason Varitek, tried to grab a glove out of someone's hand. Someone who yells "ha" when he's running around the bases and makes someone drop
Hey,
a
he's
pop
just
fly.
trying to find an edge, my friend, just
You're
like
trying to
everyone
find
else
an
back
edge.
back
Well,
in
he
like,
certainly did. He certainly found his edges, and his Yankees teammates thought he was just the absolute fakest person possible.
Well,
It's
so
well
was Ty Cobb.
documented.
So was Ty Cobb. All
All
right.
right.
I mean, like, you want to bring up a stink of a guy that, like, was trying to find an edge of the game. I mean, everyone. We were talking about Gaylord Perry and him doctoring a ball. Same thing. This guy is trying to
Yep.
play the game hard,
There-
and he's trying to win for his team.
I mean, there are so many instances of unsportsmanlike behavior across baseball history. I mean, for more than 100 years. It's not an uncommon practice to do these kinds of things. So to say that because somebody engaged in unsportsmanlike behavior when so many people did, and there are so many of them that are already in the Hall of Fame, it's hard to say that. I mean, there's the the point that you're making about A-Rod not being liked by his teammates. Who the hell liked Ty Cobb? Who the hell liked Rogers Hornsby?
Yeah, but you want to know something? You know something though? Those teams didn't have to basically fork over $25 million to have a guy sit on the bench and be a special assistant to whatever. And this is what I don't like too, is the fact that he just lives a charmed life. Hey, I'm a cheater. I made hundreds of millions of dollars. I backed out of contracts, did them during times when they weren't really right for baseball, but they were right for me. That time that he backed out during the World Series, which was also a big low class move. And now the guy just gets to be an analyst, gets paid millions of dollars just to be on television. Like, honestly, I really hope the pineapple he gets shoved up his ass when he gets to the gates of hell is completely spiny and totally worth it, because that guy is absolute trash.
I've been waiting all night to break out this line, but it's apropos right now. It's don't hate the player, hate the game. You hate the game that enabled and empowered A-Rod to be that kind of a D-bag. And they did. I mean, what do you do when somebody throws $250 million at you when you're in your mid-20s? It changes a person. It doesn't make them a nice one. So, I mean, what do you do?
I hate the Texas Rangers, by the way.
You
Keep
go
going.
snort a line of coke on some girl's ass and play a game the next day. That's what
Yeah,
you
that's
you get
family friendly. There you go.
You get a painting of yourself as a centaur. I mean, what do you do? I mean, Jesus God.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Number three, Dan.
Number three, I have as Roger Clemens. So he is my number three. I mean, everything that you said, I mean, like it's spot on. I mean, this guy, phenomenal pitcher. Like if we grew up with him in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, watching him pitch, it was not like anyone else that you have seen. The seven Cy Youngs just speaks for itself.
Cy Young Award, by the way, issued by what organization?
The writers,
The Baseball Writers Association of America. The same people that awarded him 7 Cy Youngs are the same ones that kept him out of the Hall of Fame.
and not to mention that that's a record-breaking 7 Cy Youngs. No one is close to him.
No, the only one close is Randy Johnson. He has 5.
Yep. Number two, I have Pete Rose. Pete Rose is my number two. I mean, all-time hit leader. Uh, just played the game with such tenacity. He was a phenomenal player, but obviously we all know that his character is not up to par. And my number one is Barry Bonds. You take a look at Barry Bonds' career WAR. He is number 4 on the list. Number 4, and he's not in the Hall of Fame.
It's funny you bring up WAR because of all the kinds of numbers that are spoken about in reverent hushed tones, WAR is not one of them. We talk about batting average, we talk about home runs, hits, RBIs, strikeouts, ERA, games played, hit streaks. We never talk about WAR. And what WAR is a measure of is how valuable a player is. And to be 4th all time says quite a bit.
There are 3 people ahead of him. Number 1, Babe Ruth.
Right.
Babe Ruth is number 1. Number 2, Walter Johnson.
Okay.
Number 3, Cy Young.
Right.
Those 3 are ahead of Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is number 4.
That's pretty good company to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just for fun, who's 5?
Say hey, kid. Willie Mays.
How about that? That's pretty good company to be in.
Yeah, and then Ty Cobb is right after him. That jerk.
So I'll tell you what. I will. So you had Bonds. You had Bonds 1.
Pete Rose 2.
Rose 2. Clemens 3. I had Clemens 3.
A-Rod 4.
I will trade you. I will trade you Sosa for A-Rod.
Yeah.
If you give me McGuire.
That sounds good. Yeah. How about we do some honorable mentions too, if we want
Yeah.
to? So we say honorable mentions: Kurt Schilling and Sosa.
And Sosa.
And number 5 is
five's McGuire. 5's McGuire.
4 A-Rod.
4 A-Rod. Clemens 3. Rose 2 and Bonds 1.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I like that. All right. Would you? So, Brian, would you of those five people? Would you induct any of them?
No, they can all eat a big giant bag of Richards. Here's who I would throw into the Hall of Fame because I'm a man of honor and integrity. First, I would throw in Greg Nettles and Thurman Munson, especially somebody like Munson, whose career was cut very short, tragically, as we know. If he kept going, the sky's the limit for what numbers he was going to bring in. So he's been a huge snub.
So let me
Uh,
ask you a question. I'm going to stop you on Greg Nettles just for a second.
Please do.
Greg Nettles was involved in the infamous beanball game in 1984. He was also in a brawl with George Brett in the championship series, if I remember right.
Yeah, well, I can answer both of those for you. Did Greg Nettles throw that beanball? No. Second, George Brett
Yeah, but
came in.
but he charged the mound,
Well, yeah.
right?
Well,
He charged the mound after he
so
got thrown at.
so there's been a lot of people that charged the mound that gotten thrown at.
Okay, all
Fine.
right.
You're gonna hold him to that? I mean,
Well,
fine.
I mean,
I'll go after
that's
Ken Griffey Jr. next. I'll go
well,
after.
so that's exactly my point. You've
Right.
just proved my point for me. Thank you very much.
What point are you making?
My point is that if you think that fighting is bad for the integrity of the game,
I didn't say fighting was bad for the integrity of the game. You said fighting was bad for the
people,
integrity of the game. Don't you
the
gaslight me, you
I'm not
freaking Mets
gaslighting you.
son of a...
There are any number of people that say that fighting should not be a part of the game, and that the kind
I
of
think it should be.
So I'm trying to stress here some of the holes in the argument, right? Because well, it was okay back then, right? Fighting was okay back then. Throwing high and tight was okay back then. So was PEDs.
It wasn't
So was
okay.
gambling.
PEDs were never. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No one said PEDs were okay.
Nobody ever enforced it. Nobody. They all looked the other way, which is a tacit approval. You can stand on the high and mighty baseball purist thing, but at the end of the day, nobody stopped it from happening. And after it happened, and after everyone ballooned up, and Barry Bonds' head looked like the size of like a small planetoid, it was obvious that this was going on. It wasn't something that you could say, I wonder how his head got so big. No, it's very clear why his head got so big. It's very clear why Mark McGwire looked like he just puffed up, that him and Sosa looked like WWE wrestlers. Nobody stopped it. Nobody stepped in, and they all reaped the benefits of it.
I don't disagree with that statement.
So you're telling me that Barry Bonds was drinking the tonic that Ken Griffey Jr. was on The Simpsons?
Hey, the Nerf tonic. That's
The
exactly
Nerf
who it is.
tonic. That's right.
It's like a part in my mouth and everyone's invited.
They give it to Griffey, who was like the one person who avoided the whole thing. You know what I mean?
I think of it that way too. Like that's why I like Griffey so much, right? That's why I like the kid. Is he didn't get sucked into that. He still hit over 600 home runs. And granted, yes, he didn't win a World Series, but think about if he did get sucked into that world of PEDs, he wouldn't have been out as long as he was in terms of his injury time. He would have healed faster. He would have gotten bigger, stronger. I mean, look at his sweet swing. I mean, this is a guy that absolutely would have challenged Bonds. Could you imagine in an alternate universe where Junior and Bonds go head to head? I mean, somebody would have 800 home runs at this point.
Oh, without a doubt. Because you think about like how many times Ken Griffey Jr. got injured throughout his whole career. Like the dude had 630 home runs for his career. Now, if he was taking steroids to get him back into the game when he was injured, dude would have had 800 without a doubt.
And this is exactly why, somebody like an Andy Pettitte, who's been part of all those World Series wins and so effective in the postseason, he was always that reliable number two, became extremely tarnished when he admitted to what he was doing. And he said, I was doing it not to get stronger, but to get back from injury faster. Well, I'm sorry, but that is the absolute definition of getting stronger by, enhancing your ability to heal. So in the end, I cannot give safe passage to these individuals into the Hall.
The Hall of Fame, and I think baseball in general, is reverent. The reverence paid to numbers and the reverence paid to statistics. It's what marks the time. Every conversation you have about a baseball hitter is about taking their numbers and comparing it to another hitter. You talk about the Mendoza line. That's a very famous number, 200. If you're batting below 200, you are not doing well. Baseball holds itself to these numbers. And unfortunately, for baseball right now, there are holders of some of these numbers, holders of some of these records that aren't in their Hall of Fame. And baseball has to figure out a way to reconcile that. Baseball has to figure out a way to reconcile the fact that there are players that have these records. And say what you want about their character, the things that they've done on or off the field. Baseball is going to continue to have to figure out how to deal with that. If they keep them out of the Hall, so be it. These are guys that did their thing and they did the crime, they'll do their time. If you keep them out, you're going to have to figure out a way to talk about it. And if you bring them in, you have to figure out how to talk about it. For me, I think it's easier if you bring them in because you can add it to the entire context of baseball, the entire history of baseball, with all of its color, all the blacks, the whites, the grays, all of it, all the different shades of gray. To me, that's the easier thing to do, is to acknowledge, accept, and move forward. Time will tell what the Baseball Writers Association of America will do.
At the end of it all, we all just want what's best for baseball. And that is, we want PEDs with asterisks. We want curly mustache and eugenics. And we want twirly, curly mustaches on Hall of Fame plaques for people that we think are dastardly, right? This is the way we see baseball. And if you agree with us, great. Let us know. If you disagree with us, even better. Let us know and we'll make fun of you. Spear, where can they find us?
Oh, that would be on x.com at 3toolpod, TikTok at 3toolplayers. And you can find every episode of 3toolplayers on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or on the YouTubes. Make sure you smash those like and subscribe or follow buttons or whatever buttons are there. Just like and smash all the buttons, smash them.
Push our buttons, please.
For Brian and Dan Hammer, I am Chris Beer, and we thank you for listening to this episode of 3 Tool Players.